coming in. So the house was completed in 1783. It's Georgian, obviously. The architect, Henry Holland, and he was the partner and son-in-law of Capability Brown, who did the grounds.
Okay.
Sadly, the last grounds he did, because he died before the house was quite complete.
Oh dear.
Which is a shame. The outside of the house is quite austere looking. That's the neoclassical style that was all the fashion at the time. So you've got your pillars and your pediments sort of harking back to Roman and Greek times. But you come into the house and all the decoration is on the inside. And there's lots of it to see, from the beautiful ceilings, some of the floors.
As Pat breaks half briefly to greet other visitors to Barrington Hall, I will just pan some of the lobby area, revealing some of the artwork and architectural design. What we actually see in terms of most of the artwork and furnishings is not actually original to Barrington Hall, with the house having come to the National Trust relatively unfurnished. The reasons for this will be explained later. What we do see now is the house is widely furnished and decorated with the Elmer Digby collection bequeathed to the Trust in 1981, which features fine examples of French furniture, snuff and sewing boxes, seals, clocks and watches, and small objects of the art and new virtue.
Thomas Harley was the man who had it built. He was a younger son, Earl of Oxford, but being a younger son, he had to prove himself. So he did the obvious thing, and he married a wealthy lady, Anne Bangham, and with the help of her money and what he had, he set up in the drinks trade in London. He then diversified into banking, Drummond's Bank. He got involved with the government. He became Lord Mayor of London, Privy Councillor, and an MP. So he did work. That would have been in the 1760s. So he worked hard, and then he thought, I'd really like to come back to Herefordshire, where he was born, and build a family summer residence for my family. This is
Asked about how many bedrooms.
It's only 5, so it's not that big really. I think that's one of its charms, that you can imagine a family living here. So unfortunately, he died in 1804 and had no surviving male heirs. One of his daughters had married a son of Admiral Rodney. So it goes to her and the Rodney family throughout most of the 19th century. So it goes into the Rodney family. Unfortunately though, it passes through a number of the Rodney family who didn't have children. So it wasn't lived in that much. And the house goes badly downhill in the second half of the 19th century. And so it was in quite a bad state when 1901, Frederick Corley bought it, loved it, fell in love with it, and he put his heart and soul into restoring it, bringing it back its Georgian grandeur. So he got rid of some of the Victorian wallpapers and fireplaces and put back the proper Georgian ones. So he did a lot to the house, and we're very grateful for that. But then, of course, along came the First World War, and sadly he lost 3 of his 4 sons. The surviving son obviously took over the house when his father died. He had 2 sons, and one of those died in the Second World War. When the second Lord Corley died, his wife was still alive, and his son couldn't afford the death duties, so it went to the Treasury in 1954 and was gifted to the National Trust in 1957, but with a proviso. The second Lord Corley's wife, who was still alive, second Lady Corley, could live out her last days here. It's done her. She lived on into her 101st year.
A big thank you to Pat, who gave an excellent narration of some of the history of Barrington Hall. The first room we come to is the drawing room. As mentioned previously, following Thomas Harley's death in 1804, with him having no male heir, his daughter Anne, who had earlier married George Rodney, the son of Admiral Lord Rodney, a great naval leader, in 1781, the house passed to the Rodney family. The Rodney family held it for 95 years, passing through 7 generations in the process. The 7th Lord George Rodney inherited the estate at the age of 7 in 1864. After seeing active service in Egypt and Sudan in 1891, he married the Honourable Corisande Evelyn Verguest. Corisande refused to move into the home until plumbed-in baths and lavatories were installed like where she had lived previously. During the time the couple lived there, it was reported that following a fire, the cost to repair amounted to around £700, the equivalent to £50,000 in today's money. George and Corisande went on to have 4 sons: George, James, Charles and William. The family, however, were forced later to sell Barrington Hall and estate in 1901 after years of financial difficulty. This was mainly due to the combination of poor harvests and atrocious weather on the 4,000-acre site, combined with the Great Agricultural Depression beginning in 1873 and lasting until 1896. This was only made worse by Lord Rodney's fondness for gambling, which resulted in him gambling away the family wealth consisting of much of the contents of Barrington Hall, including several Gainsborough paintings and valuable books collected by Thomas Hardy's ancestors. Lord Rodney and Corisande were divorced in 1902. George Rodney remarried in 1903, but died 6 years later in 1909 at the age of 52. Frederick Corley, who later became Lord Corley, the owner of the most successful cotton finishing company in Lancashire, and later Liberal MP, completed the sale in 1901. In 1908, a redecoration was undertaken. The interiors are characteristic of Holland's refined Louis XVI manner, many containing mythological references to the marriage of Thomas Hardy's daughter Anne to George Rodney. The bold red sandstone exterior highlights the delicacy of the neoclassical interior, which contains elegant chimney pieces, plasterwork and the staircase all. This impressive staircase, with bronze balustrading, is a Pyrenean succession of sweeping arches beneath a great faceted dome. One very striking feature of Barrington Hall is the amazing Beaja Rebecca ceilings seen throughout. This is the library adorned with antique books that maybe 7th Lord Rodney for some reason was not able to sell. In 2020, a leak discovered in an upper storeroom on the first floor led to water leaking into the library on the east and side of the room, causing damage to the delicate plaster and 300 books. Work was undertaken to eradicate mold, and repairs have since been made to the plaster ceiling as well as painting the interior of the bookshelf. It is planned for some specialist conservation work to be undertaken on repairing the damaged books and albums. This work may have already begun or even been completed. Pat informed us that the garden and parklands were designed by Lancelot Capability Brown. Brown was appointed by Thomas Harley in the 1770s to lay out a park and make the most of the spectacular Herefordshire views west towards Wales and the Black Mountains. Brown's classic device of divided views can clearly be seen from the steps of the house. To the northwest, to the hill of Croft Ambury, to the west into Wales, and finally to the southwest, where he built a 14-acre lake complete with island. Capability Brown was a grand designer, entrepreneur and salesman who became the UK's most famous landscape designer of the 18th century. His nickname came from his fondness for describing country estates as having great capabilities for improvement, and went on to work on multiple projects, which included an extensive number of places managed by the National Trust. He redesigned hundreds of parks and gardens throughout Britain and developed the natural-looking English landscape style that became renowned throughout the world. His style came from the three practical principles of comfort, economy, and elegance. He designed landscapes on an immense scale, which provided a setting for mansions which were surrounded by woodland, parkland dotted with trees, and carefully contoured ground. His landscapes also incorporated serpentine-shaped lakes and carefully designed architectural features including follies, temples, and bridges. This concludes our visit to Berrington Hall. We hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you have not already done so.